It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, everybody? This is your man, Tony Wiggins, here on a Wednesday on Locked On NFL with my partner riding shotgun, my man, James Rapien. What's going on, homie?
What's up, Tony? It's good to see you. There's a lot going on in the football world. Excited to be here on a Wednesday. And the news of the day coming out of northern Florida yesterday morning with Tim Tebow. I'm surprised you're not wearing, and if you're not checking out YouTube, you should, because I was expecting Tony to be wearing a little Tim Tebow jersey, and he's not wearing number 85 a day after Timmy T got released.
Yeah, man. No, it's not a day for celebration, certainly. But it's not a day for mourning either. A guy tried, Tim Tebow came back and he tried to fulfill his dreams of playing for Urban Meyer again and switching positions. And I had my doubts and my skepticism whether or not it would work. And I take no happiness or joy in the fact that I was right. My wife would love to hear me say that, by the way, that I take no joy in being right. But it was a long shot. He tried. It did not work. And good for Urban Meyer and the crew to just go ahead and move on because it wasn't good.
Yeah, I totally agree. And by the way, hopefully you're not one of the 36% of people that added Tim Tebow to your dynasty league, but you probably are playing fantasy football. And if you have a fantasy football questions ahead of your draft, don't miss Locked On Fantasy live on Wednesday, August 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern, streaming right here on our YouTube page, Locked On NFL. So subscribe now so you don't miss it. Our stable of fantasy experts will answer your questions live, or you could submit them ahead of time at Locked On Network on Twitter. So yeah, I think Tim Tebow, good for him for trying. But when you see those blocks, and I get it, it blew up. But that's the thing that was so hard for him. He's not in his athletic prime anymore. He was trying to make up for literally decades of not playing a position, essentially, and trying to beat out guys that have done it their whole lives. That's just a really tough ask. Again, and this isn't 2012 when maybe he would have been able to pull it off. It's 2021. And it was pretty clear that he wasn't one of the best tight ends on a team that went 1-15 last year.
Right. And it's a weak position on the team too. So it just tells you the first round of cuts to go ahead and move on. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back in some capacity with the team, but let me give you my spill on it, because a lot of people, anytime you criticize Tim Tebow, especially around here, folks accuse you of being a hater. So let me just clear this up right away. And I'm a Seminole fan, so it's kind of weird, but whenever you are a Seminole fan and then you say anything against Tim, people think you're a hater. It's not that. James, here's the way I explained it before. Football coaches and former players, all of our lives have told us how you have to buy in, how you have to be good at the ultimate level, right? Mm-hmm. You have to be there. What do they say? Your only ability is availability. That means if you're a guy who's out with injury, you got to hurry up and get back. Every rep counts. Practice counts, right? Coaches and GMs all around the league tell you they want guys in the building, and they're fighting the Players Association because we can't get anything done because guys aren't in the building, right? How many times have we seen fans blame a guy for a 2-week holdout on the fact that guy comes back and he either gets hurt or he's not in tune with the quarterback or whatever, and they go, you shouldn't have held out, right? 2 weeks. Okay, we're talking 7 years here. 7. The only reason I felt like it was going to be hard for him to make it is because everything that those people who play and are participating in this game for a living professionally is because of what they told me. They told me it's impossible for you to be out for 2 weeks, for a year, for a year and a half. But then, on the other hand, you give a guy a tryout after 7 years. That's an oxymoron in and of itself, that he could come back and make an impact on a team at a different position after you've told us. I've been watching football for 45 years. You all have told us you have to be there and you have to practice, right? It's just what I believe what they told me.
And here's the thing too. If I'm Tim Tebow, I'm rich. Okay. It's not like you're in need of the 800 grand or whatever you're doing and fighting for. So when you go to make those blocks, we say in the business, it's a business decision. I'd be making business decisions all over the place because outside of Trevor Lawrence, I'm not sure that in Urban Meyer, I don't think anyone's worth more on the damn roster on all 90 guys than me. So do I want to get hurt playing tight end in a meaningless preseason game? Like, to me, it would be really hard. You see it with fighters all the time, right? Conor McGregor. He's like, oh, he's rich now. Is he really training now that he's made it? And I'm not saying Tebow made it as a football player, but he made it as a star. His bank account is just fine. Everyone knows who the hell Tim Tebow is, and he is going to be just fine when you look at that bank account. And that matters a little bit. It just does. And so that's the other part of it here. And I'm not saying he didn't want it. I think he loves training. I think he loves staying in shape. And if you need him to bulk up, obviously he did that. He's willing to do that and putting the time into lifting. But lifting, I can go to LA Fitness down the street right now, and you're going to see guys that are big. That doesn't mean they're going to be good football players. I'd probably run circles around them, but it means they can lift heavy weights. And I think that's what you saw with Tebow. He looked it. He just wasn't it. And that's okay. At least I will give him props for trying. There's no doubt about that.
Well, I'll give him props for trying too. I think one of the most important parts of this is you have to just put respect on these players. You have to put respect on NFL players and who they are and what they are. And it's almost like the analogy that I make a lot of times in the barbershop to when guys call an NBA player a scrub. That scrub, that 6'4" dude that never gets in the game in the NBA will come to the Y and play against the 10 best players you've ever seen in your city, and he would thump them and put 80 on them. Yeah. You have to respect what these guys are and what they do. Let me give you some. You talk about the blocks. They're like 2 blocks that went viral with Tim. Mm-hmm. That wasn't even against the second team, because by the time Tim got into the game, first of all, Cleveland didn't even play their starters. So it was the second team that started the game. That was like against the third team and the fourth team guys. Now imagine if it's Myles Garrett, and imagine Myles Garrett is taking a beeline to Trevor Lawrence. Now remove all of that emotion out of it. Do you want Myles Garrett to run into Trevor Lawrence because Tebow couldn't offer him resistance? Absolutely not. So now you start thinking more like a reasonable person than a fan, and you say this had to happen.
Yeah, it did. And again, it's okay. But the future of the Jacksonville Jaguars is as much as people down there wanted it to be Tebow a decade ago, right? And I know it. I knew the thirst for Tebow and the idea of him going there and playing quarterback, and they were quarterback starved, and the flash he had in Denver, and then it didn't work out with the Jets, and Jacksonville was kind of in the mix. I get all that. It wasn't meant to be. Nope. And that's okay, because Trevor Lawrence is better than Tim Tebow ever dreamed of being. And he has a chance to be amazing. And you need to find and put the 52 other guys that are going to make his job easier as he transitions to the NFL, because he's going to be playing some good teams, some playoff bound type teams. And you want this group, this new regime, this organization to put its best foot forward in their quest to get back to the playoffs. I don't think it's going to be this year, but you need to show flashes. And Tim Tebow experiment, clearly that's not a flash that you need to continue after what we saw last week.
That's right. And speaking of Trevor Lawrence, we're going to talk about some preseason panic, possibly in some cities, about the way the preseason looked. We're going to put a little bit of ice on that hot water, man, and tell people to chill out a little bit. We'll do that in segment number 2 here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On NFL.
Do you think Trey Lance is going to be the week 1 starter in San Francisco? Maybe you think it's going to be Justin Fields in Chicago ahead of Andy Dalton. Well, you can wager on those things and so much more in one spot, BetOnline.ag. It's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. So whether it's Major League Baseball, whether it's the NFL preseason games, prop bets, comeback player of the year, MVP, maybe you think Jacksonville, Tony Wiggins' Jacksonville Jaguars, are going to win the AFC South, which that's a bold prediction. Well, you can wager on it right now and get some money for it for that opinion if you win at betonline.ag. It is simple. I've used it. You should too. And right now, you're going to get free money. So go to betonline.ag right now, sign up for free. And when you go to make that first deposit, use promo code Locked On. You're going to get a 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit. It's that simple. Free money with promo code Locked On at betonline.ag when you make that first deposit. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts.
All righty, man. We're back here. We didn't really go anywhere because we're always here on a Wednesday edition of Locked On NFL. I'm glad I got my computer issues fixed, by the way, so people can see the fun that we have here doing the show every single week. Because you should see the outtakes. The outtakes are hilarious. I got to tell you, last week I called myself Tony Rapien. It was the funniest thing ever. I was fresh off of a vacation in Mexico, so I probably still had a little bit of that water in me, and I made that, little goof, but it was fun. But what else was fun was the fact that we finally saw total leather this weekend in the NFL. Preseason games, and people waiting Jones for these games, and then as soon as the preseason games start coming, they get sick of the preseason. Now they want the regular season to hurry up and come. But a lot of panic around football here in Jacksonville. One was because of the way the Jaguars looked with 85 yards of offense with their starters going against the backups for the Browns. So I'm sure you got that stuff all around the league. First of all, let me give you a Trevor Lawrence report. The talent is unbelievable. He made one throw and after that throw, it was like, okay, get him out of there. He made a throw that was unbelievable to Marvin Jones Jr. Other than that, he held the ball a little bit, and he took 2 sacks. I'm not discouraged by that because normally what do we see young quarterbacks do? Take one look, guy's not open, and he takes off, and they start running. He stood in the pocket like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. Now, what he has to do moving forward, James, is he has to realize he's not Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. He actually does have legs. So he has to get out. But is there any panic? Have you seen any other panic around the league? I know you guys, they started to take some heat when your quarterback got hit the other day. I saw 10,000 tweets saying that they should have taken Penei Sewell. That's going to keep happening all around the NFL.
Yeah, there's a bunch of reaction, that way across the league. Certainly the Bengals offensive line is a hot topic. I think the interesting thing is these young quarterbacks, and it's not the case. I know Urban says it's a competition. There's no damn competition. Gardner Minshew is trade bait at this stage, I would say, and you could answer that or not. But the interesting thing to me about the preseason, Chicago fans, it's got to be Justin Fields' time right now.
Yeah.
And there's almost a panic to get him on the field. And while I understand it, and I think he's got the physical tools, and I think he was an absolute steal with the 11th overall pick, and may end up being there's a scenario where he's the best quarterback in this draft class. I'm not saying that's the most likely scenario, but there is a path for that to happen. And I think it was a great landing spot in Chicago. I also think that week 1 against the Rams, against Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, I'm okay if Andy Dalton goes up against those guys. I'm okay if you spoon feed Justin Fields and take your time with him, not because Matt Nagy necessarily needs to win games or anything like that, because that's the future. And taking the long view sometimes is tough, but sometimes it's the right decision. Now, San Francisco, on the other hand, does Trey Lance give you the best chance to win right now? Are you ready to go right now to win? I don't know. I think Jimmy G looked okay the other day. And so that's the thing that I want to press the brakes on. I watched Joe Burrow last year, and he was ready to win. And he was quarterbacking a team that was not ready to win. And that is a very tough spot for a young quarterback. And while he was able to not only handle it, but recover from the injury and that he suffered and all of that. And I'm not saying that these quarterbacks are going to get injured, but I'm just saying it's a tough spot to be in. And if you can avoid putting your quarterback in that spot, I think that's a good thing to do. So, just because you start week 1, Zach Wilson, right? He's going to be the week 1 starter. I don't know if I'm Justin Fields, if I'm not I'd rather be in Chicago here sitting and learning from Matt Nagy and Andy Dalton. And by week 8, I'll probably be able to be ready to go. Or next year, I'm going to be set up for success when I do get in, whatever the case is. So that's the panic. There's a lot of fan panic. Oh, play these young guys right away. Maybe. Or Jimmy G's just going to get injured and Trey Lance is going to be in there in week 4 anyways.
Yeah, it's amazing that you mentioned Jimmy G because I saw his record the other day, his 1-loss record, and it's tremendous. The problem is he's just not available most of the time. And in those big games, he may not have that extra stuff that you actually need to get them over the hump. But here's the thing, too. In football, you got to remember to keep the main thing the main thing. And what that is winning, right? And you have to first, before you can win, a season, you have to win a game. And before you can win a game, you have to win a quarter. Who gives you the best chance right now to win? And it's not mutually exclusive that we can also develop a quarterback along the way. The perfect scenario, obviously, it wasn't Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. That was not perfect because Rodgers was ready to play, and it was just a mess. The perfect scenario is actually Kansas City because they had Alex Smith. People forget Patrick Mahomes didn't play much his first year. He sat and he waited, and it worked.
He made one start at the end of the year. And guess who was there, Tony? Matt Nagy was there.
Right. And so what teams do is they see that kind of stuff, and it's like, this worked, and this is a template, and it's a copycat league. Now you flip that around, and the kid in Buffalo, Josh, nope, different situation. The team wasn't winning. The team wasn't ready to go. They all grew together. So totally different situations, but it's more than one way to skin a cat, I guess, and we'll see if these teams can stop panicking. Now, some teams are already panicking because of who they picked and who they didn't pick. Justin Fields was really the dude that was at the top of that. We'll discuss that, and we'll discuss it in this vernacular. There was a lot of regret over the Jordan Love pick. We saw Jordan Love play the other day. And just because people were saying that Green Bay was not smart about how they built the team around Rodgers, it didn't mean that kid couldn't play. Because now we see, and we'll discuss this at the top of our third segment about the draft, we see that Jordan Love actually can play. So he can play. They probably were wrong to pick him because Aaron Rodgers can still play, but he can play. And people were talking about him as if he was just this lost puppy that couldn't play, and that's just not the truth. So third and final segment here on the Wednesday on Locked On NFL is coming up here in just a second. After I tell you about Built Bar, I've always told you about Built Bar. Built Bar is the absolute truth. Built Bar is the greatest protein bar ever. And I mean, when I say ever, I mean ever. And I don't know why you haven't tried it yet if you haven't, because they have 9 great flavors, all 100% covered in chocolate. My personal favorite is the salted caramel, and you guys know the routine. It's because of the contrast of the salt and the caramel. I sound like a food blogger, but that's okay. I can do that because Built Bar is fabulous. And if you don't believe me, you can try it yourself. If you log on to BuiltBar.com and hit the promo code LOCKED15, you'll get 15% off of your first order of Built Bars. Now, packed with protein, very low calories, very low sugar, very low carbs. So if you're trying to watch your weight, it's a good snack for you to have between lunch and dinner to keep you moving. So it's Built Bar at BuiltBar.com. Promo code is LOCKED15. Also check them out on Twitter at @bar_built for all the latest news and information. Here on a Wednesday, James, Tony, rolling along here. And let's talk Jordan Love and talk about draft ramifications, James, because we know in the past that teams have tried to be copycats, and everyone wants to get a quarterback to have for the future. People thought it was a mistake in Green Bay, and there was a lot of draft regret. Now that Jordan Love can play, you see that it shouldn't be a lot of draft regret because he's going to be their quarterback next year because Aaron Rodgers is under a 1-year deal. So my question to you is, what did you think about Jordan Love, 1, and 2, how does that affect how teams think moving forward in the draft?
Well, 1, I think that they put him in a position to succeed. You had a lot of quick check downs and quick passes early just to get him in a rhythm. And then you saw, the arm strength, and he pushed the ball down the field, ended up 12 of 17. And look, when you looked at Jordan Love coming out, I don't think anyone thought he was a day one starter anyways. So when the Packers moved up to get him, they did take the long view, right? And that's what some of these teams are trying to do with their young quarterbacks right now. And that part is going to be interesting to see how they manage this, right? Because we got an Aaron Rodgers, we got a guy who could be asking for a trade next offseason, could be moving. not only to a new team, but they could end up trading him. And I think if you're Green Bay, that's kind of the best case scenario where Rodgers ends up playing really well. Maybe you win a Super Bowl this year. Jordan Love flashes in the preseason and shows he's ready to go. Rodgers says, all right, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to walk out of here. And you get something decent in a trade where then you can build more and put more pieces around Jordan Love, because it's a pretty good team already, as we know. And so that's what I think can happen. I like the way they used him. I think he flashed some. He's obviously not going to play this year barring injury, but it was going to be a process when they picked him. And I think next year it's not as strong of a quarterback class. You might see that with some of these guys, where instead of day one starters in the draft, you draft a guy like Desmond Ridder, my guy out from the University of Cincinnati, and he sits for a year or two and learns the game and learns the pro game. And then it's like, okay, he's got the physical attributes. Let's unleash him. Because that's what's going to happen with Jordan Love. Barring something really unforeseen, he's the future starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And I thought that preseason week 1, that was a good start for him, because you do want to get his confidence up. He's obviously going to dress this year, didn't dress last year. And who knows? He's one injury away from playing. So you need to get him moving and in that direction. And I thought that was a good step against the Houston Texans.
Now, watching Justin Fields the other day, we talked about Bears fans wanting him to be in right now. Mm-hmm. Do you think at all that there are teams that did not pick him that looked, or the fan bases, of course, but you think there's a GM that looked and went, we should have taken him?
Oh, to me, let's start with Detroit. I mean, you're Detroit, and yeah, you take Penei Sewell, and I get it. But you have Jared Goff. Do we really believe Jared Goff is the future of Detroit Lions football? Because to me, it could have been the same scenario. You take a guy like Fields, he's got this cannon for an arm and all these physical attributes, and you're taking the long view, and you're going to let Jared Goff take the hits and work with the average weapons, and then you build up your team. And a year from now, it's Justin Fields, and you swap out Jared Goff. You get a second rounder for him or something like that. So that's one. Carolina is another one, right? Where I think you could certainly be like, all right, Sam Darnold, maybe, but did you really need to get J.C. Horn? Did you really need to get a cornerback when you could have taken a cornerback when you could have taken the quarterback of the future? And maybe Sam Darnold is it. He's young. I'm not saying that.
Or that other kid. That other kid, I don't know who he was, but he looked good too.
Yeah, but so Justin Fields, to me, there's a bunch. And honestly, you could go as high as number 2 in New York. We'll see with Zach Wilson. But there is a scenario where you're like, why was he not the second best? He was the second best quarterback. He whooped up on Trevor Lawrence and Clemson, and everybody overthunk it. So there is a scenario where we go all the way up to number 2 and say, what are you guys doing? Atlanta's another team, by the way. So
I was just thinking about him.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them for sure.
Yeah, Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, he said something about that the other day. He said that you got to look at this and go, the native son from Atlanta, mm-hmm. Arthur Smith, his success that he had with Ryan Tannehill, great athlete, mobile, good legs, play action. It was perfect to me for him to go mm-hmm. home to Atlanta and start the coach quarterback connection that we've seen for so many years, that once you get it right, and the ultimate example is Belichick and Brady, that once you get it right, that it goes over a decade. Dungy, mm-hmm. Manning, that thing, Russell, Wilson, and Pete Carroll. And now we see Reed and Mahomes. Those things, when you get them together like that with Roethlisberger and Tomlin, when you get it, when you hit it right, it would have just been, to me, a good. Atlanta is the one for me. Atlanta and probably the Jets. So they're the ones for me that I'm like, wow. Nothing against Kyle Pitts, but you need somebody to throw him the ball too.
Yeah, in that dome, like Justin Fields' athletic ability and speed. You know how fast they'll be able to play in Mercedes-Benz Stadium if he was the quarterback. So, and you're right, Kyle Pitts might be the best skill player in this draft class, right? I mean, looks really good, moves well, but he's not a quarterback. And so we'll see. If Justin Fields ends up being the savior in Chicago, and I think it's a great landing spot for him, personally. I really do. I think of all of them, San Francisco would have been good, but I'd rather be in Chicago than New York. I'd probably rather be in Chicago, not even probably. I'd rather be in Chicago than Detroit. I guess you could argue Carolina, but we still don't know about Matt Rule. So I think he landed in one of the best spots for him. But I think there's going to be a lot of teams that may look back on this draft and say, man, why did we overthink it? The kid was great at Ohio State, and we outthunk ourselves. And that's why Zach Wilson's our quarterback, or that's why we have Kyle Pitts and no quarterback.
You don't have to outthink yourself when it comes to making wagers, because if you listen to the Locked On Bets podcast with your boy Q and expert Lee Sterling, you're going to get all the information that you need that will help you when you go to BetOnline. So make sure you subscribe and tune in to the Locked On Bets podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and check out your boy Q and Lee Sterling. All right, man. So Wednesday's come to a conclusion. James and I have to end this party, and we'll let you know that you don't have to go home, but you got to get out of here. And we're going to say what we always say. Take care of each other. We'll see you next Wednesday here on the Locked On Podcast Network on Locked On NFL. For James Rapien and Tony Wiggins, take care.